Ever get those family holiday cards, the ones that are like picture perfect?
Oh, yeah.
Everyone's smiling, everyone's happy, and you have to wonder
Right.
what's really going on behind those smiles.
Exactly.
And that's kind of what we're looking at today. We're diving into Hidden Valley Road by Robert Kolker.
Okay.
And it's the story of the Galvin family.
Mm-hmm.
12 kids, falconry, big family dinners.
Wow.
Like you said, picture perfect.
Sounds idyllic, yeah.
Colorado. Sounds pretty idyllic, but
It does.
here's the thing. More than half of their sons end up struggling with schizophrenia.
Oh, wow. See, that's what I find so fascinating about this book, is it really makes you think about mental illness, about families, about what makes us who we are. It really gets into all of it.
Yeah, and Kolker doesn't shy away from those tough questions either. Like, was it their genes? Was it how they were raised?
Right.
Or was it some heartbreaking combination of both, you know?
Right, and we're talking about a time, I think 1960s, when if you had schizophrenia, the blame was often put on the mother.
Oh, wow.
It's hard to imagine, right?
Yeah. Can't even imagine.
On top of everything else.
And on top of that, there really weren't effective treatments. But okay, let's rewind a bit. The book does such a great job of painting this picture of life on Hidden Valley Road. You've got 12 kids. Everyone's trying to find their place.
Right.
And then you start to see these early signs with the oldest son, Donald. We now understand it as schizophrenia, but back then...
Right. It's so sad because those signs, they were often misinterpreted or dismissed. I mean, imagine Donald was fixated on religion, ran through a bonfire once.
Oh, wow.
Looking back, those are red flags, but...
It makes you wonder, why didn't anyone see it?
Yeah.
But Kolker, he does a great job putting us right there in that time period. You can really feel how different the understanding was back then.
Absolutely.
Like the family, especially Mimi, the mom, she was trying so hard to keep up this image of a perfect family.
Right. Trying to maintain normalcy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But behind closed doors, things are, getting really tough.
And it wasn't just Donald, right? As more of the brothers, we're talking Jim, John, Brian, Michael, as they start showing signs, it's like this chilling pattern emerges.
It's heartbreaking because each brother, they experience it in their own way. Some with paranoia, some with hallucinations and delusions. It just shows how differently schizophrenia can affect people.
They're trapped, though, trapped in this world that just keeps getting more and more frightening.
Absolutely. And you really feel that in the book, how schizophrenia, it robbed them of their dreams, their relationships, even their sense of self.
It's tough because you also have to think about the daughters, Margaret and Lindsay.
Right. What about them? They couldn't have been untouched by all of this.
No, not at all. Try to imagine growing up with that. Watching your brothers fight this thing no one really understands, and then just trying to find your own place in all of that chaos.
I mean, the book talks about how they could sense the changes in their brothers, even at a young age. The tension in the house, it was palpable.
Oh, absolutely.
It's so easy to focus on the brothers and their struggles, but Kolker, he does a brilliant job of showing how deeply this affected the daughters, too.
It wasn't just witnessing it, though, right? It was adapting to it.
Yeah, they had to find ways to protect themselves.
Finding those coping mechanisms, creating their own little bubbles of safety in this storm.
And that's where you really see Margaret and Lindsay's strength.
Oh, absolutely. Even as kids.
Margaret, she found comfort in order, routine, anything to make sense of the chaos. And Lindsay, she became fiercely protective of her brothers, even when she didn't understand what was happening.
It's like their stories are threads,
Oh, I like that.
all woven together in this bigger story of the Galvin family. And each thread adds another layer, another dimension to understanding mental illness's impact.
It really makes you think, how many other families out there are living this?
So many. And the Galvins, they become this mirror to those struggles, the love, that search for answers. It's a universal story, really.
It's wild how this one family story ends up intertwined with, the history of schizophrenia research.
I know, right?
They're living through it, and then, boom, they're part of the effort to figure it all out.
And it's almost by chance, too. They get on this researcher's radar, Dr. Linda Lisi. She was convinced that schizophrenia, it's all in the genes.
Okay.
Which at the time, that was kind of a radical idea,
Really?
Yeah, focusing on these multiplex families with multiple members who had schizophrenia, it was still kind of controversial.
Huh. It's like a movie or something. You've got this family going through unimaginable stuff, and then science knocks on the door. Like, hey, we need your DNA.
Exactly.
But they're open to it, right?
Yeah,
The Galvins participated in DeLisi's research.
they did. And it was huge for the field. I mean, think about it. The stigma around mental illness, the blame that families were carrying.
Oh, right, like it was their fault.
Yeah, and they still open their lives up like that.
That says a lot about...
Totally. They wanted answers, not just for their family, but for everyone.
It wasn't just about their sons. They wanted to help everyone.
Absolutely. But that level of involvement, it brings up a whole other issue,
Yep,
right?
totally. The ethics of it all.
Right. Like, who owns that genetic information? And what about discrimination based on what they find? Informed consent, especially with vulnerable people, that's huge. Kolker really digs into those ethical questions surrounding genetic testing and research.
And these aren't just, like, philosophical questions. Right? This has real-world implications.
Absolutely. These are issues with huge consequences.
Totally. But for the Galvins, I mean, what treatments were even available back then? I remember reading about Thorazine. That was one of the first antipsychotic drugs used to treat schizophrenia, wasn't it?
It was. Came out in the 50s, and honestly, it was a mixed bag.
How so?
Well, on the one hand, imagine the relief for families like the Galvins. Finally, a medication that might help.
So it could actually reduce those really difficult symptoms.
Yeah, like hallucinations, paranoia, things that made life so hard for their sons.
Right, right.
Before Thorazine, it was basically just institutionalization, which,
Heartbreaking.
Yeah.
For everyone involved.
Exactly. But Thorazine, it came with its own problems, the side effects. They could be really bad, almost as bad as the schizophrenia itself sometimes.
Kolker doesn't shy away from that.
Not at all. He really lays out those tough choices. Risk the side effects or keep searching for other treatments knowing there's no guarantee.
It's like, what do you do? Such an impossible position to be in.
And you really see the limits of the medical system at the time. The Galvins, they were desperate for something to help their sons. Tried everything, experimental therapies, different doses of meds, but the system just wasn't equipped to deal with mental illness in all its complexity.
Emotionally, financially, it must have taken a toll on the whole family.
It did. They were pioneers in a way, navigating this unknown territory, making these impossible decisions with hardly any guidance.
And through it all, they kept going.
They did. They loved their sons no matter what. Even when they didn't understand what was happening, even when it was hard, they never gave up. That's love right there.
There's this one part in the book, after Mimi dies.
Okay.
The siblings, they all come together at the old house.
Yeah.
And they're sharing stories, laughing, remembering after everything. It's this really powerful moment,
It is. It reminds you that even with all the pain, all the hardship, there's still that family connection. Kolker, he really captures those little moments of joy of just being human.
Exactly. Makes you think about the brothers, though. Like, do they ever find any peace?
That's the thing about schizophrenia, isn't it? There's no easy answer. Some of the brothers, when their symptoms were managed, they could live pretty normal lives,
Yeah.
Jobs, relationships, even moments of genuine happiness.
Wow.
But others, they couldn't escape it, needed constant care.
There's that part where Lindsay, she says something like, it's not fair. Why did some get better and others didn't?
Right, and there's no good answer sometimes.
It's heartbreaking, but it makes you think about that nature versus nurture debate, right?
Exactly. The genetics definitely played a role, but you can't ignore the environment, the family dynamics,
Right.
society as a whole even.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
all intertwined, hard to separate.
So where does that leave us? What are we supposed to take away from all of this?
For me, the Galvin story, it's a call to action. We need to understand mental illness better, find better treatments.
Absolutely.
We need to treat people with compassion, not judgment. This book, it reminds us that behind every diagnosis,
There's a person
yes, and a family.
going through something most of us can't even imagine.
And they're clinging to hope, searching for answers, just like the Galvins. That's what makes Hidden Valley Road so important. It's not just about mental illness. It's about love, resilience, the power of family. So remember the Galvins, remember their story. Let it inspire you to learn more, do more, be a voice for understanding and compassion. We need it now more than ever.